Greetings, land of the brave and beyond, and a very warm welcome to this afternoon's media briefing. As always, we are coming to you live and direct from the Government Information Center studio here in the heart of the nation's capital, Windhoek. For this media briefing, I will be your host. My name is Hileni Philippus Hamunyela. Now in studio with me this afternoon, I am joined by the Minister of Industries, Mines and Energy, Honorable Modestus Amute, and he's here to update the nation on matters pertaining the fuel price. But before I can accord him the platform, I would like to just get these few house rules out of the way. The mobile phones are to be set on complete silence for the duration of this media briefing. And to the media practitioners here present this afternoon, should you have any follow-up questions resulting from the statement that is going to be read by the minister here, you are encouraged to find the floating mic and start by briefly introducing yourself and the media house you represent, and then you briefly post your questions, and then the minister will then address your questions. That being said, we now start with our media briefing this afternoon. Honorable Modestus Amute, good afternoon once again. It's over to you to brief the nation.
Very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Honorable.
Sorry for that. Members of the media, fellow Namibians, good afternoon. I wish to firstly acknowledge and sincerely appreciate the entire public for tuning into this media conference, as well as the continued coverage by the media of the ministry's activities, especially during this period of uncertainty in the international oil market and the subsequent fuel price decisions affecting our local economy. This media conference is intended to brief the nation on the government's decision regarding the August 2026 fuel prices, as well as the measures being implemented to mitigate the impact of international oil prices on the Namibian economy and consumers in general. The Ministry of Industries, Mines and Energy has completed a review of the fuel price for August 2026 and hereby informs the Namibian nation and all stakeholders of its decision. The ministry wishes to reassure the nation that Namibia currently maintains adequate fuel stocks and that there are no immediate risks of fuel shortages in the country. The fuel supply chain remains operational and stable, with sufficient stock holding levels that are maintained by oil marketing companies to meet national demands. I want to highlight on factors that contribute to fuel price decisions. Number one, the international oil market developments remained highly volatile, driven by geopolitical tensions, global supply concerns, and fluctuations in global demand. And this is very serious, especially taking into account the calculation from the 1st of this month up to today. Another factor is the increases in the international cost of petroleum products contributed to higher landed cost, meaning that when we acquire the fuel products or petroleum products at higher cost, then it has a negative impact on our landed cost as well. That increases the landed cost. Exchange rate movements also affected the cost of imported petroleum products into Namibia. And another factor is higher freight and demurrage cost that further contributed to increased landed costs. We also had rising international crude oil and refined petroleum product prices for petrol and diesel that resulted in a minimal over-recovery on petrol and under-recoveries on both diesel grades. According to the ministry's latest calculations, the average price of petrol, which is 95, for the period starting the 1st of July to the 27th of July, was at US dollars, 115 US dollars per barrel. That represented an increase of 2.87% compared to the last month, June. The average price of diesel, 50 ppm, increased also by 10.97%. 10.97% on diesel, from the US dollar 127 that we experienced per barrel last month, June. At the moment, during the period starting 1st July to 27 July 2026, it actually rise to $141 per barrel in July. Similarly, the average price of diesel 10 ppm increased by 11.10%. That is from US dollar $127 per barrel that that diesel traded in June. We have experienced an increase of 141 US dollars per barrel in July 2026. The average exchange rate stood at $16.42 per US dollar, representing a depreciation of approximately 0.24% compared to the June 2026 average of $16.38 per US dollar. Those are the factors that I really wanted to bring out, because at the end of the day, these are the factors that we use as government to do the calculation when we are reviewing fuel prices. We are now going to August 2026 fuel prices. As of 27 July, the provisional over-recovery on petrol and under-recovery on both diesel grades recorded as follows. An over-recovery experience on petrol with 2.9 cents per liter, but then we had an under-recovery on all diesel grades. Following the outbreak of conflict in the Middle East earlier this year, the government introduced several measures to cushion in forecast consumers against high fuel prices at the pumps, and one such measure was the temporary reduction of selected levies imposed on fuel by 50%. I think we can remember this one, for 3 months. That was effective from April to June 2026. This measure was extended by another month during July 2026. Considering that the global oil market has now relatively stabilized, And in addition to the arrangement put in place by government, of course, despite the continuation of tensions in the Middle East, the government has resolved to reinstate the 50% levy reductions for all affected institutions in order to boost their coffers and enable the implementation of their critical budget items with effect from August 5, 2026. Therefore, this had or will have an impact on the pump prices for both products, that is the petrol and the 2 grades of diesel. But before I announce the fuel prices for August 2026, I want to announce the following: that the National Energy Fund will absorb the under-recoveries recorded on diesel, as well as the remaining levy portion of 2 cents per litre, as the government has resolved to increase pump prices by $2 per litre. At this juncture, many Namibians may be asking why fuel prices may increase, despite the government having secured an emergency fuel supply arrangement to supply petrol products at basic fuel prices flat rate. The answer is simple. The answer is that the current fuel price adjustment is primarily the result of the reinstatement of the fuel levies, which had been temporarily reduced by 50%, so we are bringing the 50% back, over the past 3 months as a government intervention to cushion in consumers from the sharp increases in experience in the international oil prices, meaning that because for the past 3 months, we did not have the 50% of certain levies put on the pump price. But as I'm speaking, I'm saying we are now going to reinstate those 50% of all the levies that were removed from the oil product. That, of course, have impact also on the pump price. These levies are essential for financing critical statutory obligations and strategic programs of various beneficiaries, including the road user charge levy that is used for road infrastructure development. It is important to emphasize that had the government not concluded the emergency fuel supply arrangement with Vitor at BFP flat rate, motorists would have been required to absorb not only the reinstated fuel levies, but also the additional import premiums that suppliers would have charged above the basic fuel price. During recent months, these premiums have fluctuated between approximately 50 cents and $4 per litre, depending on prevailing international market conditions and supply constraints. Consequently, without the government's emergency fuel supply intervention, the pump prices at Walvis Bay would have increased by approximately $6 per litre for both grades of petrol and diesel. And I want to repeat this one, that without the government's emergency fuel supply intervention, the arrangement we have been talking about, the pump price at Walvis Bay would have increased by approximately $6 per litre for both grades, that is petrol and diesel. This increase would compromise approximately 2 cents per liter, resulting from the reinstatement of the fuel levies and a further estimated 4 cents per liter attributed to fuel in import premiums above the basic fuel price. So we are talking about an additional $2, an additional $4 that we have now removed as a result of the arrangement that we have put in place from the 1st of July up to the end of September. The emergency fuel supply arrangement has therefore significantly mitigated the impact of the international fuel market on Namibian consumers by eliminating the substantial import premiums that would otherwise have been passed directly to motorists. As a result, consumers are paying only for the reinstated fuel levies, while the government's intervention has prevented an additional increase of approximately $4 per liter on supply premiums. Accordingly, had the emergency fuel supply arrangement not been implemented, the estimated pump prices at Walvis Bay, as I am announcing today, would have been as follows. 1, petroleum 95 or petrol 95 would have been $28.48 per liter. It would have been that. 2, diesel 50 ppm would have been $30.26 per liter. And diesel 10 ppm would have been $30.36 per liter. So government interventions to cushion in for consumers, therefore, have helped, and then the government arrangement also to ensure that we remove the premiums with the arrangement that we have put in place for the next 3 months have also helped us. I thought I have to put this for our better understanding. Now, government continues to implement substantial interventions through the National Energy Fund to cushion consumers against the full impact of international oil price shocks, and that the security of fuel supply remain intact. The ministry reassures the Republic of Namibia, our public members, that Namibia has sufficient fuel stocks and the national fuel supply system remains stable. Before I conclude, I must now inform you of the current or the new price per liter for both grades, petrol and diesel. For petrol 95, it will now be $24.48 per liter. And remember, it would have been $28 and some cents. So at least with the current arrangement, we have managed to bring it down, as I promised to the nation, to only $24.48. It's still significant, but at least it's better than if we had not made that arrangement. Equally, for diesel 50 ppm, it will now be $26. That was from $24, as it has been, 26 cents per liter. For diesel 10 ppm, it will be $26.36 per liter. And remember the comparisons I made, that the diesel grades would have been 50 ppm at $30.26 and 10 ppm $30.36. Would it not have been for the intervention that government have taken? Therefore, in conclusion, the Namibian government remains committed to ensuring security of fuel supply cushioning consumers where possible, supporting economic stability, and that's the reason why we have reinstated all the levies, precisely because now we have an arrangement that is enabling us to reinstate those levies, because they are very, very important to assist us continue with the development of the country, especially, specifically with regard to funding some of our development projects such as roads. So minimizing disruptions to critical sectors of the economy is our duty, and the ministry continues to monitor international market developments very closely to ensure fuel prices remain reflective of actual import cost while maintaining stability in the domestic fuel market. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for informing the nation on the latest news pertaining the fuel price. It is very highly appreciated. Now, the next segment is intentionally set aside for the media practitioners here present this afternoon. As earlier mentioned in my introductory remarks, should you have questions deriving from the Honorable Minister's statement, please kindly find the floating mic. Start by briefly introducing yourself and the media house you represent. You can then proceed to state or briefly post your questions to the Honorable Minister so that he can then address the questions. All right, I'm informed there is a change in plan. If you have questions, you can kindly step by the podium and briefly put your questions to the Honorable Minister. Do we have any questions? Okay, so then that means the Honorable Minister's statement was quite clear and brief it was. Thank you so much then, Honorable Minister, for finding time to come and once again, brief the nation on matters concerning fuel price. And even though we've come to learn that there is an increase in the fuel price, we still do appreciate the interventions that the government of the Republic of Namibia has made to ensure that it is not as it should have been. We have learned that it should have been, petrol price should have been at 28, if I am not mistaken, and then the diesel at 30 for both types. Right? Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for making time to come and brief us. And like I said, we really appreciate the efforts that the government is putting in to ensure that the Namibian nation is met halfway so that our pockets, we don't dig too deep in our pockets. Thank you very much. Now, Namibia, that concludes our media briefing for this afternoon. Thank you so much for having tuned in. From myself, Hileni Felepa-Samunyela, and the GIC production crew. Until next time, take care.